In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term, gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to the set of Making Known the Unknown. My name is Tarryk. I am the host and producer of this program. As you may or may not have noticed, there are two empty seats next to me. These seats are reserved for two very special gentlemen who will be arriving a little bit later on. These gentlemen are the focus of this program. They, through the information that they have gathered, have put together 25 years of research. The gentlemen that I'm speaking of are Sidney Schwartz, who is a researcher and middle school teacher, and Reverend Hewitt, who is a pastor of a church and a psychic medium. Now, for the past 25 years, these two gentlemen have traveled all over the world, seeking information and confirming the hidden agenda of religion for the purpose of financial and political gain through mind control. It would be my great pleasure to share with you clips from some of our shows where we have dared to ask the questions: did Jesus really die for our sins? Who wrote the Bible? Who was Mary Magdalene? What really happens when we die? And what are the origins of homosexuality? In these shows, we also take on subjects like women in the Bible. Jesus was a medium. Sins are profitable, and crop circles. Sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and be ready for a trip. A trip that will challenge each of you personally to open your minds. I present to you the best of Making Known the Unknown. And this is getting back to the title of our show, or the topic of our show, which is, did Jesus really die for our sins?
Jesus did not die for our sins. He died for the sins of the priest that shouted, "Crucify him," because he was such a threat to the priest at the time, because he had the gift of seeing in the future. It's known as remote viewing.
I've read also other accounts of the Council of Nicaea that these 318 bishops that came to this council all brought their Bibles with them. And their Bibles, again, were not exactly, today we go to, Bible's more or less the same. If you get the same version, it'll read the same. But back then there were differences within them. And this was some of the things, other things they were trying to iron out, was to come up with a more authorized text of the Bible. Mary Magdalene was a prophetess or a priestess of the god Isis in Egypt, and she understood the secrets of that society. And when the Bible talks about that she washed her hair, she took her hair and washed his feet. That was one of the ceremonies that was conducted with Isis, from what I understand. And so she was very psychically aware. She understood psychic science very well as Jesus did. And this is probably a bond that they shared. One of the reasons that they probably decided to get married in the first place, because they had this common understanding.
Did you want to add something to that about what happens when people die?
Well, this world that we're on now, from birth to death, is actually a school. And then when we reach a point, we give up the physical body, which really gives birth to the spirit body, and we go into the other kingdom, and we continue learning in that dimension, you see. For truly this proves, as the spirit voices have told me, that being gay, as we use that term today, is not a choice. It's not a choice, it's a natural thing, because the soul in that man's body who is attracted to another male is a female soul. And so the soul in a woman's body who is attracted to another woman, has become masculinized. And there was never a time that women crossed over. It was men, that men crossed over. It was women that did it in the first place, but that was a law of the land set up by the priest. That's all there was to it.
On a whole, you don't see women having a central role of authority at all through the Bible. They're always kind of in a secondary position. Partially because the religions were patriarchal and they didn't want the women to be prominent, because it goes back to the conflict between the priest and the medium. The priests wanted total control. They wanted the people to be the intermediaries between the people and the spirit world, but most of them weren't gifted, and therefore the prophets were the gifted people. They were the ones that could hold a two-way conversation. When it talks about in Exodus chapter 33, it says that Moses used to take the tent and pitch it outside the tent, and anyone who had a question would go out to the tent of meeting and ask it to the Lord. Well, that's because they got a two-way conversation going. They would ask the question, and there was a medium there, and the spirit person would speak through the medium and give them an answer. So it was a two-way conversation between a physical person and someone in the other dimension. But the priests couldn't do that. They could imitate it, but they couldn't do it. So they were afraid of the women, and they didn't want the women to be in a place of authority, because it was more likely that a woman was a medium, because they are more sensitive to the spirit world and could bring forth messages. And this is why when Christianity was established and Paul came around, he in the 15th chapter of the book of Corinthians, it talks about a woman must be silent in the church.
My question to the viewers of this program: if the spirit world, the people in the spirit world, spoke to all of these people all the way through that book, why don't they speak to us today? They do. But mediums have been put down, they've been burned at the stake, they've been butchered, they've been killed, they've been hung on the cross. He was a great medium. He was a wonderful medium. And that's what he tried to teach his 12 students in the upper room. It was a seance every single night.
But the thing that's even more dramatic is Jeremiah, because he lays the whole thing right out. And what he says in chapter 7, starting with verse 21, is, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, add your burnt offerings to your sacrifices and eat flesh. For I did not speak to your fathers or command them in the day I brought them out of the land of Egypt concerning burnt sacrifices." He's specifically saying Spirit or God did not ask for sacrifices. The priests put it in.
Let me tell you, too, something before we start with this.
Okay.
They said, I'm waiting till we got on the air to do this.
Go ahead.
They said, just as we have been producing these pictures, we're producing very advanced crop circles. We lived here on the planet a long, long time ago, and we want the people that sees these to know how advanced we are, but we want the people to know that we are afraid to show ourselves because we're afraid of the people, because the people they are ignorant. They only use a little bit of their brain, make guns and bombs. They've got so many religions. People have gone crazy on the planet. We're afraid of the people. but we are leaving what people are used to knowing as their calling cards. So we are leaving calling cards. We are leaving pictures, and we're leaving crop circles. That's our calling cards. And when people gain knowledge on the planet, which they will, after all the turmoil is over with, and people start accepting each other, and all the turmoil is over with here, and peace is on the planet, we will show ourselves. You will see our aeroships, and you will see us once again. We live in the 21st century, in the 21st universe, as well as many other universes. And we are coming back to our home planet. The planet, the universe,
Emerald?
the Emerald universe, which is our favorite universe. And they said that in the Milky Way, which this is on the edge of the Milky Way, there are 10 billion suns, and this is one of them. Show your pictures.
Okay, I guess
Thank
we could
you.
have the clip.
Okay. What I want to be sure that everyone's aware of in their folders is that there's a little yellow folded piece that should be on the right-hand side. And when we ended, is it yellow, Sid? No, it's salmon, isn't it?
Oh, salmon, yes.
Salmon. Yeah. That is the piece that when we ended the last segment speaks to Dot Botcher's artwork. And that is to promote the Garden of Angels. So you all can be aware of that. And if you'd like to see some of her art, other than this, she has many, many beautiful pieces that you're welcome to come and view. And the information's there on how to do that. Okay. See, we don't just throw paper at you. There's a meaning to all of this. Okay. You ready, Sid?
Yes.
This segment is going to focus on precipitated art, a little more detail as far as some of these pieces and how they're produced, and a few more pieces that are yet to be uncovered. And then towards the end, Carl Willing, with some energy, may do a little message work. And what we mean by that is one or two people. It's going to depend on what Spirit says is or isn't okay. We just have to go with that. And he may convey some messages to someone here who might need to hear something today. Okay. Sidney?
Okay, welcome back from the break. We're going to be talking about different aspects of mediumship in this particular segment, but you know, one of my maybe downfalls is that when I went to undergraduate school, I was a history major. So I'm always bringing history into what I'm looking at, and sometimes it's biblical history and sometimes it's not. And recently, I went to an art exhibit that I'd like to talk to you a little bit about. Yeah, I'll get that later. And this particular museum is the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, and they had an exhibit about the Byzantine Empire. It was called Faith and Power from 1261 to 1557. If you're not familiar, Byzantine Empire is talking about the Orthodox Church that was in Turkey and Syria and eventually went up into Russia and Armenia. And all the Orthodox religions branched off, were under the branch of Byzantium back when the Roman Empire was in two empires, the western half, which had the Rome as the head of the church, and the eastern half, which had Constantinople as the head of the church. And I visited this exhibit with a friend, and the reason I'm talking about this at all is because we found some interesting information there when we went to the museum. Now, the museum doesn't allow photography and of special exhibits. They do allow photography now if you have a digital camera without a flash. And I saw some signs, you know, as you walk in an exhibit, they have signs about what you're seeing. They give you a little bit of history and a little bit of explanation for pieces. And I found a couple of signs that actually really blew me away because they were exactly what anyone said. So I went back to the museum and I got a hold of this book, which is the large print labels for the exhibit. So some people who are vision impaired or have a hard time reading the signs that is kind of dark there, they can take this book with them into the exhibit and read what the signs say. And I could take the book into the bathroom and photograph it, and that's what I did. Next slide, please. So in this thing, it gives a definition of icons. And icons is from the Greek word ikonos, or image, and it acts as power expressions of the Orthodox Christian faith. And we're skipping over the great part. Orthodox theology considered icons to allow the viewer direct communication with the holy figure represented. The viewer's prayers were addressed to the holy figure, not to the painted image. Very important. So in other words, you were standing before this image, this picture, and you were saying your prayers to it, but your prayers were really going to the person that was pictured. I saw this, I got very excited, because it was exactly what Awan had told me in different words. Awan had said that Jesus taught that God was within. But the church didn't want people to know that God was within, because then you could turn within to your own Lord God of your being and do pretty much whatever you want, and you didn't need the priest or the rabbi or any minister to be intermediary between you and God. So what they did was they created training wheels, as Awan termed it, which was statues and icons. Okay, well, let's put one up. This is an icon of an angel, which is also the cover of this book, which is where I got a lot of the pictures from for what we're going to see. They were training wheels to get the people to get their direction outward and upward, because they said God was in the sky someplace, and not inward. So when I saw that this was actually the theology, this was exactly what Awan had said. Next picture, please. Then there was another sign where this particular word was, and I'm going to murder it because I don't decode well, and this is Greek. Archiopiatos, I think that's what it is. It's a Greek word, and it means not made by human hands. A term used to describe images depicting Christ, the Virgin, or a saint that initially appear in a miraculous fashion, or that are able to replicate themselves without human intervention. Weren't we talking about precipitated art? Reverend Hewitt said, not touched by human hands? These blank 3x5 cards, and I was there, I saw it. The cards were blank. The medium showed the cards to everybody. They were all blank. They went into a basket. You'll see it later. We have a film of it. And again, these pictures came out. Not touched by human hands. They're archiopodius. Next picture, please. Here is an icon of Jesus. Now, I want you to look very carefully. Look at how Jesus is dressed. He has a red robe with a blue-green mantle. Look at the picture on our card that we got in 1999, a red robe with a blue-green mantle. Look at this statue. In 1999, in the spring of 1999, in some mishap, this statue ended up on the floor and went into pieces. And one of the church members decided to take it home over the summer and restore it. It used to be green. When we came back, she had repainted it. We got this back in September or October of 1999. We got this picture in August of 1999. Notice that the person who was restoring it was influenced to paint the robe red and the mantle green. The same colors as in the picture, the same colors that were done hundreds of years ago back here. Now, is that a coincidence? Are we making known the unknown? Are you starting to, or should we say, are we making seen the unseen? Are we starting to see that people throughout the ages have been influenced by spirit to do certain things? It was interesting. I just barely had enough time to scan this in the computer because this is an afterthought that we're doing today. There's another picture in here of an icon of Moses, and it's very interesting because Moses has the same colors as Jesus, but in reverse. He has a blue robe with a red mantle. So it's not that they painted all holy figures this way. So we wanted to bring that to your attention. Next slide. This particular icon was supposed to have been made without human hands. And since we understand precipitated art in the present time, we can see now that this could come back in biblical times. Again, next one. This particular picture is a representation of Veronica's veil. Now, the story of Veronica's veil is not in the Bible. I cannot explain why it did not make the Bible, or why maybe it was taken out. But the story is that Veronica saw Jesus as he was carrying the cross. He was sweating profusely, and she took her handkerchief and she wiped his brow, and when she took the handkerchief back, Jesus' face was on the handkerchief. That would be precipitated art. The Catholics have this as part of the Stations of the Cross, but it's not in the Bible for some reason. And this is a representation of it. The next slide will also be a representation of it. And the following slide, again, is a representation of precipitated art with a biblical connotation. Okay. How do I do this? The next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to come about a little bit up in history, and we're going to go back to the 1890s. In the 1890s, there were two very famous sisters, and they were known as the Bang sisters, May and Elizabeth Bang, I believe. And they worked out around the Chicago area and in Chesterfield, Indiana, for sure. And they were mediums. And what they would do is they would take they would give readings together. It was like a pair of speakers. So you had one sister here, and it was like a chair in the middle. And the person sat across. And as they were reading, when they felt the energy was right, they'd reach down between them and they'd pick up a blank canvas, and they'd each hold a blank canvas. And as they were talking, a portrait would appear on the blank canvas, similar to as if you ever watched a Polaroid film develop, and it slowly appears, it slowly precipitates. That is what happened. And there's many, in Chesterfield, Indiana, there's a museum called the Het Museum, and they have lots and lots of pictures. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of them. The Het Museum in Chesterfield, Indiana, houses a collection of 25 precipitated pictures produced by the mediums Liz and May Bang in the late 1890s. The spiritual nature of these pictures is quite evident. one of the sitters wasn't too happy with the picture they received because apparently, I think his wife had died and she was in the picture, but she always wore her pearls and he was upset because the pearls weren't there. So he took his picture home and hung it up on the wall. The next morning when he came down to look at it, lo and behold, the pearls are there. There's another picture there where there was lots of roses in a big rose bush, and the number of roses would change from day to day to day. This was a very, very, very special gift that these two mediums had. These pictures are quite fascinating. They have been studied by researchers as far away as Japan and so forth, who tried to analyze and figure out if it was made by pastels or oils or what type of art materials were used, and they really can't tell. They really can't see any brush strokes on these pictures. So they really are quite fascinating, and they're early examples of precipitated art. The next iMovie you're going to see is going to deal with the medium Hoyt Robinette, who produced the precipitated art that we have here on our stage with us. And so if we could run that movie, it'll show you exactly how Hoyt does this.
The gift of precipitated art is when spirit directly produces a picture or writing. It is a very unique gift that only a few mediums can produce. Reverend Hoyt C. Robinette is one such medium. The dictionary definition of precipitation indicates that it is a term in spiritualism. Hoyt takes 3x5 cards, oil pastels, colored pencils, pastels, felt tip markers, and crayons and places them in a tightly woven basket. He then covers the basket so that all the art supplies are in a totally dark environment. Just as light would destroy images recorded on photographic film, this type of phenomenon cannot occur in the presence of light. This is how the cards are created. A spirit artist draws the picture he or she wishes to send. Then the spirit creates or focuses on the picture. Once this thought is generated, spirit lowers the frequency of the thought until it is vibrating on our own earthly frequencies. Then the corresponding colors of the art materials are magnetized onto the cards in the correct positions to form the identical picture that spirit generated. Once the basket is closed, Hoyt goes into a trance state. While he delivers clairvoyant messages, the cards are being produced. When the messages are over, the cards are ready. The pictures that are produced are truly magnificent and are comparable to works of art from the great artistic masters such as Renoir and Monet. Furthermore, many of these precipitated pictures are in various artistic styles. Some of these pictures have the clarity of photographs. This is the first card that Carl received in 1999. Lone Eagle, Carl's spirit control, is flying high in the sky, and Lone Wolf, another Native American guide, is also pictured. The face is that of the artist. Many different spirit people signed the card. Reverend Bingham was a close friend of Carl's and was instrumental in convincing Carl to become an ordained minister. Rabbi Baer did not always believe in spiritualism. However, he is now regularly communicating with Carl. Billy Don English was the trumpet medium who we write about in My First Encounter with an Angel. Tragically, Bill died in 1990. We were fortunate to come across his signature dated 1975. The comparisons of Bill's earthly signature with his spirit signature is convincing evidence proving life after death. We have had several famous spirit visitors sign the backs of the cards. This card represents the physical and spiritual worlds. It was signed by Abraham Lincoln. Again, the comparison of the signatures allows one to conclude Abraham Lincoln did sign the card. As you will soon see, the artwork of some of these cards is comparable to the great masters. While working on this film, I thought I recognized the face on this card. When I searched the internet, I found the portrait of Claude Monet, and as you can see, it is his portraits on Hoyt's precipitated card. Hoyt held precipitated card seances for an entire week when he visited Gifts to the Spirit Church in May of 2001. Halfway through this series, a new phenomenon occurred. By accident, two attendees discovered that if they put their cards together, it would form one larger picture. The edges matched so perfectly, it looked as if it had originally been one picture, which had been cut in two. Hewitt was quite excited by this because it had never happened before. Then we discovered two other doubles, which did not align perfectly. However, the most mind-boggling event occurred on the last night of the seance. One of the attendees recognized a duplicate of her card that she received on the first night. When the two cards were placed side by side, they formed a perfect picture, despite the fact that one was precipitated a full week earlier than the second.
The gift of precipitated art is really quite astounding to witness. Some people have some problems with it because it's so mind-boggling that they think it's fakery, it's magic, because they can't process it. Because here they're seeing blank cards go into a basket, they're watching the basket the whole time. One of the seances that was performed, the Gifts of the Spirit Church, I took my video camera and it stayed on the basket the whole time. And as you could see, no one touched the basket that we could see. The unseen dimension probably was having a field day, but they weren't being recorded on my camera. So there's no, some people, if they don't understand how the Spirit works and how these gifts work, then they just go, they can't process it. And you short circuit to, it's fake. Okay, that was my mother's experience. She saw this, she came to the seance, and part of the seance was the fact that clairvoyant messages are given. So my grandmother came through to her. But this medium just said, your mom is here. And that didn't sit well with my mother, you know. Didn't sit well with my grandmother either. And Hewitt went to the next person and started the reading, and then he said, no, I gotta come back to you. The woman's telling me her name's Sylvia, and that was more convincing than anything else because my grandmother was very persistent. And so my mother definitely knew it was her. She had no problem with that part, but then afterwards, about 10 minutes after the seance, she said, oh, that was magic. Then when she later on she said, did that guy with the cards, is he coming back again? You know, because my mother's, you know, she hears me talking about this a lot. She went to really Orthodox, she still visits the Orthodox rabbis and has seen them with the long hair and everything, and she studies with them. So she has her one foot in the very traditional world, and she hears me about this, and it goes back and forth, and she goes back and forth along the fence quite often. But that really pushed her buttons, you know, because she couldn't process it. And I understood right away, so I didn't argue with her. I just said, you know. So when she asked me about if he was coming back again, I said, oh, I guess it must be more real than she's willing to admit. Okay, A1, yes. We have some pictures here of A1 that we received. A1 again is the angel without a name. He is an ascended master coming from the highest levels of the spirit world, meaning he ascended just like Jesus ascended. Ascension is described in the Bible when Elijah leaves the earth plane. The Bible says he went up in a fiery chariot. Basically what happened was that if you ascend, you concentrate on your physical body and you make the molecules of your body speed up, go faster and faster. And at a certain point, you're vibrating faster than gravity will hold you, and you start floating up. And that's why it's called a flying chariot, a chariot of fire, because there was a lot of energy around and he was no longer in the air. Now, if it happened today, they might have said he was in an airplane or a helicopter. But back in biblical times, the only mode of transportation was a chariot. And so he went a little bit faster, and there was an explosion of light. The molecules of his body went into light, meaning they were vibrating faster than we could see it, and that's what its ascension is. Jesus ascended. I'm told Moses has also ascended, and this is why in the book on the Mount of Transfiguration, Moses and Elijah came back to talk with Jesus because they were his spirit teachers. The other picture of A1 we have is over here, and again, it's a different image of him. But A1's holding a red ball of energy, which is supposed to be also a protecting orb, I believe. So these are our last examples of precipitated art that we had blown up. Okay. I was talking about ascension for some reason. I'm trying to get back to that. But I can't pull it up. Okay. Our next segment that we're going to talk about is the kind of happening a little bit today, I think, is the gift of trance. The gift of trance is an interesting gift of the Spirit because it varies so much. Some people, when they come up to speak in public, they will take on a different demeanor, and it's called inspirational speaking, and that's when the Spirit is working with the speaker. It's a very light form of trance, and what's coming out of the mouth of the speaker might be something that they hadn't planned to say, or a way it hadn't thought about. And that's, I think a little bit of that's happening today with us. Deeper levels of trance, a deep trance medium, the spirit leaves the body completely, and another spirit comes in, and this is how I communicate with A1. Reverend Hewitt goes into a deep trance, his spirit leaves his body, A1's body comes in, and we have a conversation where we're speaking to each other. But what we're going to see now is we have a video that was made in Charlotte, North Carolina, not too far from here. It's from Reverend Hewitt's hometown, it takes place in a cemetery. And you're going to see that Reverend Hewitt's demeanor is quite different in this particular video than it was in the other video you saw today, or how you saw him today. And this is because and again, this is my theory. I don't have confirmation of it. But one of the spirits that is around Reverend Hewitt is Oscar Wilde, and Oscar Wilde liked to push the limits a little bit. And I believe you're going to see that kind of thing happen. So what was happening here is a very light form of trance. It wasn't deep trance mediumship, but as Carl speaks, his whole demeanor is going to change. Okay, so this is a demonstration we're showing you from the video. Okay, let me turn this on first, and then you can hit the button.
Very close to where I'm standing, my dearest friend when I was small, we were both the same age. The only name I knew her was Dixie. She also had the gifts of the Spirit, same as myself. And she knew things that other people didn't know. She heard voices that no one else could hear. She saw visions, the same as myself. Dixie Hewitt, as I said, we were both the same age, and because she was able to hear voices and see visions, she was treated so badly by the church, the Baptist church, that when she reached, she was about 15, she could not handle it any longer, the way she was treated by the people in the community and the church and everything else. And she took her father's shotgun and went out in the woods and she killed herself. And I quit school and left home myself to find answers, and this is why I hitchhiked all over the southeast and went into every building that had a steeple on it. I never looked at the names of the buildings, the churches. I just simply went by a building that had a steeple on it. I was looking for answers, and I was treated worse than people would treat a sick dog. Tried to find answers, And so when I got older, I went out on my own and I found the answers. And today, even though I've been treated terribly, I'm still trying to get people to understand the truth. I have found the truth, and the truth has set me free. Jesus taught the gifts of the Spirit. That's all he taught. He did not die for the sins of the world. He died for the sins of the priests that had him killed. He taught us that God is within us, not in the sky somewhere or other. She was one that was gifted. In his day, she would have been called a prophetess. In my time, if I was living at that time, I would have been called a prophet. She would have been a threat to the priest, just as Jesus was a threat to the priest. She was not liked in her day. I am not liked in my day. She died at 15. I refused to take my life even though I was treated very badly. Jesus, that poor man who gave his life trying to teach the truth to the people, he suffered terribly. And he died feeling sorry for the people because of their ignorance. In 1975, my half-brother, who's buried here, he kept appearing to me. I couldn't understand what he wanted. It was like he was talking to me, but between he and I, there was like a great big thick wall of glass. And he was trying to say something, but I couldn't understand what it was he was saying. And then after a while, he started giving me a name. It was Etna. And I traced this out and found out that there was a place in Etna, Maine, where a lot of mediums would go, they would gather. And so I found out that where it was, and I went to Etna, Maine, and found out that there was a man there from Burlington, Vermont, who was a great medium. And I had never been there before, and I'd never heard of this man. And I went there with a reporter from the Hartford Courant. And I told him it might be a wild goose chase, but we went anyway. It took us a long time to get there. And so the Hartford Courant reporter really was skeptical. He thought that I had met this guy previously and made this story up. But anyway, we went into the audience, and we were the first one in there, and the man went into trance, and this energy took him over, which turned out to be my father. And after my father talking to me through the medium, and then he said, there's somebody else that wants to talk to you here, but he didn't tell me who it was. It turned out to be my brother, who was buried right here. And the tears started running out of the eyes of the medium, and he was crying for a long time, and he was begging me to forgive him because this brother of mine did not treat me very well. He treated me terrible. He hated my guts because, you see, he was the baby of the family for a long time until I came along, and he tried to ruin my reputation, I guess. He tried to drive a wall between my father and myself, all of this garbage, because I had the gifts of the Spirit, and he tried to convince my father it was the devil in me and all this nonsense. And so my father didn't understand me until he died and went over to that other side. So here's my brother over there that can't progress, and there's nobody over there to forgive him. So I had to forgive him. So he told me, he was talking to me just like one of you people would talk to me, and I said, you mean to tell me there's nobody over there that can forgive you? And he says, no, there's nobody over here. Well, people, those of you that's watching this program, I want to ask you this question. If there's nobody over there to forgive you for something you've done over here, doesn't that answer some questions? So he said, no, there's nobody over here. Only you can forgive me. I says, well, really, I have never held it against you. I just figured that it was your ignorance. I've never held it against you. So you are forgiven. And there was a lot more tears from the medium because, after all, he was using the body of the medium to talk to me. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, study your Bible, because there were many places where a person used the medium, in those days called a prophet, to get messages to us. So, if you understand it correctly, what was going on in the days of the Bible being written is going on today. But religion does not want you people to know this. Do your homework, people, and you'll understand what we're talking about. My brother died and his bones are in the ground right here. But he lives in another dimension, and he communicated with me through a medium, which in the old days was called a prophet. So did my father do this, so did my mother do this, and so did other people as well. This is why the Indians are so willing to come back and help us out, because you see, they did not have some God that was off out there in space. They knew that God was within them. They knew that their soul was the God that was in them. And wasn't it Jesus that said that God is within us, that know that ye are gods? It is so simple once you do your homework. And I'm not asking any of you to send me some money. So be it. This tombstone here, and the name on it, was to be my father, Private Willie C. Hewitt. Private Willie C. Hewitt and my mother were really engaged. And he was to go off to the war in 1917. And my mother wanted to get married before he went off to France to fight in World War I. But he says, no, we'll get married when we come back. And my mother says, I see you coming back in a box. He says, no, I'll come back alive and we'll get married. She says, no, you won't. And so she had a big cry about that, and he came back in a box. And so he's buried here. In the meantime, she married another man who was also named Hewitt, but they were not related. And I find it very interesting here, and I would like to tell you people that my mother and this young man were more related, more connected, and they are together in the world of spirit. And my father, who died in 1964, is connected with his first wife more than he was with his mother, with my mother. So my mother, who died in 1983, and her boyfriend, she was to marry but didn't, and he died in the war, they're connected and they together in the world of spirit. Which means if we are bonded together and meant to be together here in the physical world, we will be that way in the other dimensions. This proves it, people. So my father is connected with his first wife in the other dimension. And so my mother is connected with him in the other dimension. So everybody's happy. And I want everybody to know that. So if anybody is watching this, I'm standing in a cemetery. I haven't been drinking. I'm not on dope. I am trying to bring you a message here from the graveyard. So regardless of what you believe or you don't believe, every one of you, if you're not roasted in an oven somewhere, you're going to be buried. You're going to go into another dimension after you die, and you're going to be with somebody you should be with in another dimension. And I'm not going to call it heaven. It's simply another dimension. But whatever dimension it is, remember, you created it here. And if you were a violinist here, you're going to be there playing a violin. And if you play it good here, you'll play it better over there. Simple as that. So be it.
So that's an example of what I believe is a light trance. Okay. Well, the one thing I would like to point out to you, the blue booklet that's in your packet there,
As I said before, this presentation we sometimes do can take up to 10 hours just dealing with the Bible. So some of the gifts of the Spirit, like the gift of materialization and the significance of the cabinet, a lot of that is covered within the booklet, and that's why so I didn't have to cover it today. We also talk about the Mount of Transfiguration in there and many other things, along with lots of different Bible quotes and things like that.